Welcome to the Green Room. We're here today to talk about the coronavirus and the effect that it's had on pets in lockdown. And joining me are some familiar faces. We've got Juliet, who knows all things cats, Marie, and Wendy, dog expert. What are the potential problems that you guys see with living with pets in lockdown? It's quite a strange situation for us all to be in, but our pets are obviously going through that at the same time. So Julia, I know you've got cats. Cat?
A cat, yes.
I have. And you must have taken some calls during this time from people needing advice. What's your experience been with people that have had problems with their cats during lockdown?
So my cat actually is very old now, so I don't have too much of an issue because she doesn't really want to venture out very far. She just lays on the patio and suns herself. We have had the odd question from people whose cats do go out and venture around the neighbourhood, asking if their cat can bring the virus back to them. There is no evidence to show that cats can pass coronavirus on to their owners or to anyone. But obviously, you're asking people to just take precautions. The surface of a cat is similar to any other surface, and if somebody has stroked the cat and they are showing symptoms, there is a possibility that it could be carried on the cat's fur. There is sort of no evidence to show that, but the likelihood is that it would only last a few hours, maybe 24 hours at the most. It's not the same as a solid surface because it's quite a rough surface. So we've had those kind of questions. Mostly people are still letting their cats go outside. Occasionally people have wanted to keep their cats indoors, so we've given lots of advice on keeping your cat entertained whilst it's kept indoors. The problem is if you've got a cat specifically that's been used to going outside, suddenly stopping it having access to going outside is really stressful for the cat and can cause behavioural issues and even medical issues. So we don't recommend keeping your cat indoors if it's been used to going outside. But if you do, there are some tips and hints on our website to help people to entertain their cats in this time.
Yeah, wasn't there something in the media that came out maybe a week or two ago saying that the cats could carry the coronavirus, and I don't know if that's true or not, that they couldn't pass it on to humans, but they could pass it on to each other or something. So I think, have you found that's worried people, that they can catch it?
I think, it has. It's still very, very. It's being looked into. They still don't really know. It's such early stages. They think that possibly we can pass it on to cats, but they shed it in their feces and it's already dead, so it can't be spread through their feces. I don't think there's still any evidence that cats can pass it to other cats either. So there was a lot of worry about that. But there's still no evidence either way, really.
Wendy, in terms of dogs, is that a concern of any dog owners, that the dogs could carry it? Have you seen any potential problems with owners not wanting to walk their dogs or go outside the home with them, if that was the case?
No, I think so far the cases that I've dealt with are not. They're not necessarily related specifically to this situation. I do think, however, there will be some people who are living in built-up areas who probably aren't taking their dogs out and walking them because they are worried. And it depends on the individual, really. If you have a big garden and a very mature dog, then the dog can be perfectly well entertained in other ways in the garden and in the house. It's more of a problem for people that have young dogs. And there are some issues surrounding the care of younger dogs and the entertainment of younger dogs during this period of lockdown.
So I guess younger dogs, they sort of need more in terms of socialisation than older dogs, which they're obviously not getting at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big problem for anybody that's adopted a puppy or is adopting a puppy. And yeah, there's lots of things that aren't happening at the moment that are normally factors of our life, like planes, for instance. Our skies are empty at the moment, so puppies aren't having the habituation to the noise of aircraft, or traffic is significantly reduced, so they're not getting the experience they would of a busy road. So there's lots of things that have changed. I mean, firework displays, okay, it's summer, or spring, summer, and we wouldn't normally be having that many firework displays, but there's still occasional ones with birthday parties or weddings and that sort of stuff that happens in the environment. And our dogs or puppies at the moment won't be experiencing that sort of thing. So there is some extra work we need to be doing with puppies. And obviously, if we're not walking, because we're only allowed one walk a day, with a puppy, I would be advising an owner to take the puppy out 2 or 3 times a day for short periods, whereas actually the guidance at the moment is for up to an hour once a day, which is a bit challenging for anybody with a young dog.
And they're not able to sort of, a lot of people are quite worried by letting their dogs off lead at the minute. I found that with my dogs, that the majority of people you come across, they quickly put their dog on lead, or people that have previously been happy to let their dog socialise off lead aren't walking them off lead at the minute. And that must be really hard for puppies that just want to go over to other dogs and people and say hello. But people seem quite wary. Have you found that?
Yeah, I think and the general advice we would give people at the moment is obviously we have to protect human health, and it is important to make sure that our dogs don't have the freedom to run up to strangers, and that strangers are then touching and feeling them. So it is actually better that we keep our dogs on lead. What's important is that we make ourselves much more interesting to our dog, to make us the most exciting thing in their life when they're in an environment where they would normally be off lead. So we need to entertain them and play with them, but with us on the lead.
Okay, it's good advice. And Marie, how is it affecting small animals? Because I don't think that's probably something that people think about too much. Usually we associate small animals with being in cages in the home. And if they do have sort of the free run, it's usually of the garden. So how have you found that it's been affecting small animals?
I think for pets already existing in the home, it's not going to have a massive impact on small pets with regards to kind of a massive change of routine, because obviously a lot of the small pets, some of the rodents are going to be sleeping during the day, and if anything, actually the pets are probably going to get slightly more care. They're going to be owners are going to notice any health issues, any behavioural issues, things like that a lot quicker, because unfortunately it's a historical fact that small animals are really easily neglected, because you go through that initial purchase stage. It's so exciting taking on this new pet. You'll absolutely love it and pay all this attention to it for the first month or two, and then very quickly you get into your life routine again. The children carry on with school, you carry on with work, the children get bored and things like that. Whereas I think this is kind of offering an opportunity actually for families to reconnect with their small pets. We've obviously been trying to get lots of enrichment ideas out there, because so many people are looking for activities for children to do. So we've been trying to just inspire people a little bit on what they can be making, how they can interact with them, training, socializing, things like that. So I think it has its benefits for small pets, but equally, obviously, some of the other small pets who are perhaps in the house, so something like chinchillas, probably aren't going to appreciate as much noise, because that's going to be changing. Certainly, I know from my home, it's noisy all the time at the moment. We've got little people just charging around constantly, whereas before, I think your pets would get into that routine of having that kind of short burst of energy and there's my pet, and then they go to bed or they go to school, whereas at the moment it's we're here all the time. So I think it probably, on that front, for some of the more sensitive sort of eared small species, it could be a bit stressful. But equally for rabbits and guinea pigs, and even pets like rats and stuff, I think it certainly probably is offering them an opportunity to get slightly better care.
Yeah, I suppose, like you say, it does have its advantages advantages, and it's interesting hearing you talk about that, because I know my dogs at home absolutely hate me being at home. Well, not so much me, the children, full time. They basically live in the garden now. And it's really hard, isn't it? Like you say, when they're used to peace and quiet during the day, so they learn to tolerate a certain amount of noise and activity. But then they get, however many hours you're out at work or the kids are at nursery, and they get that peace and quiet. But when, there's no break from it, cats, Juliet, can obviously sort of generally take themselves away quite easily from that, do you find? Whereas I think dogs and small animals are a bit more trapped within that environment.
I think definitely if your cat's still going outside, then it will just take itself away, go outside, lay under a bush somewhere until the children have gone to bed probably. But
wish I could do sometimes.
I know, yeah.
I do that.
Yeah. I can imagine you doing that, Marie. I think in the home, if the cat is elderly especially and can't get up high and get away from the children, they sleep more when they're elderly. On average, cat will sleep 16 hours a day. That will increase as the cat gets older. So it kind of needs that little quiet room. Even if you put a baby gate up, and you can get baby gates with cat flaps in now, and just put that up against a room and say that's the cat's room, or that's the cat's area, and don't disturb the cat while it's there.
Oh, that's great advice. And can you get those quite easily, now?
Well, as far as I'm aware, I haven't ordered one recently, but as far as I'm aware, you can get them on, online on Amazon and other sort of big places like that. Because cats can wedge through most baby gates or climb over most baby gates. But if it's very elderly or overweight, which a few cats are, they can't squeeze through and they can't jump over. So the cat flap is a bit of a good idea for those kind of cats.
And you don't work for Amazon, so you can get them elsewhere.
You can. Did I say Amazon? Did I say Amazon? Or did I just say big places? Oh,
big places.
Amazon's a big place. I was going to name other kind of pet-related websites, but felt I couldn't because I'd forget one of them. So
you can purchase it online at any
well-known retail outlet.
Excellent. And Wendy, how have you found it with you've got, like you say, you've got a horse, you've got a dog, you haven't got little ones running around, but how have you felt that it's changed? Has it changed their routine in any way?
For my pets, I would say that probably my dog's having an extra hour's walk a day because my husband's taking her out on his own for an hour and then I take her out as well. So she's probably having an extra hour's walk on top of the times we go over and feed the horse, and she has a run around with her toy over the field. So as a 12-year-old, she's probably getting a lot more exercise than she tends to need, albeit she is fit and healthy and thoroughly enjoys it. I think what we're finding more often now, though, is the fact that people are keeping their dogs on leads. We're seeing more people out in the environment with dogs, so dogs are seeing dogs on lead more often than perhaps they would have done 3 or 4 weeks ago. And people are tending to walk more or less sort of during the nice warm hours of the day, rather than early in the morning where they used to before work. And again after work. So I think the walking time has been compressed into a shorter period of time, and there's more people out as well. So dogs are seeing other dogs on lead, and those that aren't friendly are finding it challenging, and their owners are finding it challenging, because I think there's an increase in the lunging and barking, where dogs are frustrated at being on lead and perhaps not necessarily friendly towards other dogs.
Yeah, because I guess people used to be able to drive to places. If they wanted to go to a quieter area, they could drive to a country park, like you say, early in the morning, or drive to a field. But the advice now is to stick close to your home. So people are having to walk around built-up areas where they usually wouldn't as well. And that must be causing quite a lot of stress for dogs that don't particularly like being around crowds of people or other dogs.
Yeah, I think it is. And really, my advice for people in this situation is always take something high value out with you: food, cheese, chicken, ham, hot dog, whatever your dog's tummy copes with, and make yourself more interesting every time your dog sees another dog, whether or not he's friendly. Give him something tasty, turn around and walk the other way for a few strides. And the other thing is, perhaps try walking early in the morning or late at night when the majority of people aren't walking nowadays. So that would give your dog a better experience out on a walk, where he's less stressed about the fact that there's other dogs in the environment.
And Marie, what about the effect of neutering on small animals? Because obviously, you know, during lockdown, a lot of vet practices have shut down and they're only operating emergency care for animals. Has it had an effect on sort of the numbers of little baby chinchillas, rats, etc. being born, and then they're not able to rehome them? Have you had any sort of issues like that arise?
I don't think we've had so many necessarily contact us yet. However, I do tend to kind of follow quite a lot of all the various forums for each species, just to kind of keep an eye on what's the current kind of hot topics and things like that. And I'm certainly seeing a lot of people commenting about, you know, finding an unexpected litter of baby rabbits, having guinea pigs given birth this morning, the hamsters had given birth. And unfortunately, that seems to be that now that we're kind of hitting the kind of 4 to 6 week period of being in isolation, a lot of those people have perhaps gone out and purchased small pets from pet shops, or, you know, small breeders and things like that before they've gone into lockdown, assuming that they've got the right, you know, sex, they've got 2 females, 2 males, or you know, whatever. But unfortunately, a lot of the time, they have been missexed and they've got one of each, or they've taken on something that's already pregnant. So I would say each day I'm easily seeing, you know, 5 or 6 different comments on different forums of these unexpected babies that are appearing. So, you know, that's always been happening. But what the concern I would say at the moment is that those babies are going to start maturing, you know, 6-8 weeks down the line. And if we're still kind of in this situation, it's how they're going to get that support. You know, obviously they're going to need guidance on making sure they've sexed them correctly this time. And then obviously, as you said, the neutering side of things. Most vets obviously have reduced their kind of services dramatically, and obviously are mostly seeing only emergencies. So, you know, unfortunately, neutering isn't necessarily going to be considered as an emergency at the moment. So I think, you know, for charities like ourselves, it's just trying to be there to give as much support, whether it be video call and things like that, to enable us to support them with getting them correctly sexed, and then hopefully supporting and giving them guidance on how best to rehome them later down the line. Because what we're also seeing is that, you know, certainly at the very beginning, so many people would suddenly just, right, we're going to be stuck at home, let's get a new pet, let's get these small animals, you know. And so there's loads of people desperate, constantly saying, I'm in this area, I could walk to you to come and collect it, and things like that. So I think it's just trying to support people to make the right decision. Certainly for us, I think on small pet front, you know, obviously the vets aren't considering neutering, but the vaccinations, obviously there was quite a sort of, at first, that was also stopping. Thankfully, a lot of kind of specialist small vets are now offering vaccination services. So if you have got rabbits or ferrets that need vaccinating and you are really concerned, then it's best to contact your local vet, your vet registered vet, and they'll be able to guide you as to what their current process is. But yeah, there does seem to be a few that are now supporting it, because for rabbits there is a constant threat of them being exposed to myxomatosis and VHD. So unfortunately, allowing vaccinations to lapse at the moment is a really scary time for a lot of rabbit owners, because it's almost like the virus. You can't see it, you don't know it until it's too late. And so it's a really daunting time for those owners at the moment that have been told that they can't do anything. So I think the best thing they can be doing is obviously staying at home and trying to take as many precautions as they can, things like mosquito nets, and just getting guidance from their vets. But it certainly is a bit of a worrying time health-wise on that front for small pets.
Yeah, like you said, if you're a vulnerable person that can't leave the house, or you've been advised not to leave the house, to then go to a vet's to get your dog or small animal or cat neutered or vaccinated, that might seem like quite a risk for very little reward. But like you said, actually, there's a lot of dangers with not neutering or vaccinating your animal as well. Is that the same for cats, Juliet, in terms of neutering and vaccinations? Have you found that, or do you foresee it being a problem in the future if people aren't getting their cats neutered or vaccinated, that we might end up with lots of poorly cats and lots of kittens to rehome after this lockdown is finished?
Yeah, the general advice at the moment is if you've got a kitten or a cat that isn't vaccinated, hasn't had its primary vaccinations anyway, and hasn't been neutered, is to keep it in. So obviously that is going to cause issues, especially as the kitten gets older and more inquisitive and wants to go outside. But if you let an unneutered cat outside, we all know what happens very, very quickly. Cats can breed from 4 months of age, so it's that's the age that they want to go out, and they will start asking to go out. When a female cat comes into season, she will call very loudly and often will sound in pain as well. So it's really important that owners don't rush their cat to the vet thinking that their cat is in pain. If it is unneutered and it is calling out, it's a good idea just to have a look online and see videos of cats doing that kind of weird call that they do, so that you can differentiate between that and the cat being in pain. If people don't let them out, then if they haven't had their primary vax and they haven't been neutered, then obviously that shouldn't be too much of an issue. There is also the problem of having two kittens of different sex and trying to keep those apart when they get to 4 months old, because obviously brothers and sisters can mate, and not everybody realises that in the animal world. So it's a really good idea to try to keep those apart, which is really difficult with energetic kittens. Yeah, as soon as they can be neutered, we recommend getting them neutered immediately, because they will want to go outside as they get older.
And like you say, they need to go outside, so preventing that could cause, okay, it'll stop perhaps the medical problems, but will create more behavioural problems because of it.
Yeah.
And Wendy, in terms of dogs, I mean, I know that I've been a bit reluctant. One of my dogs has been a bit lame, and sort of the effort of trying to get an emergency appointment, you think, oh, I'll just leave it a few days and see if it gets better on its own, whereas previously you might have taken your dog to the vets. Do you foresee there being any problems with people sort of not taking their dogs to the vets and there being undiagnosed illnesses and conditions that aren't being treated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd probably all agree amongst us that if your pet is poorly and you are concerned, your first step is ring the vet. Have a chat over the phone, because the vet isn't going to ask you to come in if the vet can give you some advice over the phone to make things okay. But equally, if the dog's got, or the pet's got, a condition that could be treated earlier and some measures put in place that would potentially save its life, then it absolutely should go and see a vet. And I know that we're concerned about people not visiting the hospital when they have conditions that they really should go and talk to the NHS about. And I think the same goes for us with our pets. If the pet is ill, then it really does need veterinary treatment, and we should be at least talking to the vets over the phone, who can give us some advice on what to do next.
But emergency care is expensive, isn't it? I mean, if you have to go through the emergency vet, just for a consultation, it is, sort of 3-4 times the amount, the normal price. And for people that, are on low income, and people in this time that have that sort of financial instability, to sort of pay, whatever it is, £130 for a consultation, it's a lot of money, isn't it? It's a big ask for people.
Yeah, it is a big ask. However, it won't cost anything to at least have the conversation over the phone. And there are some options out there for people that are on low incomes or are financially challenged. There are some charities out there. For us, for instance, we do provide some low cost support to people who are finding life challenging at the moment, or at any time, to be honest. So it is still worth doing your research and getting some advice. The vets will point you in the direction that you need to go if finance is a big issue. But at least making the call and getting some information is the first step along that route.
What are the reasons why people are getting pets? I mean, good intentions aside, when they get back to working, are they going to have time for those pets? You found that with cats and kittens at all, Juliet, in terms of people wanting to rehome them because they're at home and they want something to play with, or they think they've got the time to socialise a kitten? But obviously this lockdown could end at any time, right?
Yeah, and with socialising kittens, it is more difficult because obviously you're not getting loads of people coming. Whenever you have a litter of kittens, everybody wants to come and see them. So a lot of kittens get really well socialised in homes, and in our foster homes, they get really, really well socialised. Luckily, all our kittens at the moment are out on foster, but there are going to be kittens being born in other houses where they're not getting those visitors. So those kittens aren't going to get that socialisation. So we are recommending that people do. It's going to sound crazy, but dress up in different clothes and put on a different hat and a pair of glasses and even a fake moustache and try and look a bit different, because those kittens are just going to see the same old faces. And the more a kitten experiences between about 2 and 7 weeks of age is the kind of real time, but just a little bit beyond that as well. The more they experience in that time, the more well-rounded adults they're going to be. And yeah, just don't take on a kitten at the moment if you don't feel that beyond, or a cat, that beyond that you're going to be able to give them the time. I think at the moment, there are going to be people offering kittens up for rehoming very soon. And it is tempting because it will keep the kids amused and it's a nice thing to have around. But just remember, when you go back to work and when life returns to normal, are you going to have time for them? It's not so much of a problem with cats as it is for dogs, because they don't need us as much. So they do have a little bit more, especially if they go outside, they'll have more independence. And as I say, they sleep a lot in the day anyway, when we're out. So, I'm not saying don't have a cat if you work or a kitten if you work, but just bear in mind that, times are going to change again.
And Wendy, what about the Kennel Club? I mean, a lot of people seek Kennel Club guidance when it comes to sort of the buying of puppies, because people think that a Kennel Club registered puppy is a good thing. Regulation there. What's their guidance on going out and getting a puppy during lockdown?
Yeah, the breeder should be licensed. If you're looking for a Kennel Club registered breeder, Kennel Club registered puppy, it should come with a proper 6th generation pedigree, and you should be doing the research. So really, the breeder ought to be sending you some information on the dog's pedigree before you buy it, or they certainly could do that. And you can start doing some research on what the parents are like, in terms of their genetic background. And you should be asking if the puppy's had the health tests done that are recommended for that particular breed. I say the puppy, it's actually the adults that generally have the health test. Not in all cases, occasionally it can be the puppies, but it's usually the parents that have the health tests done for any genetic diseases before the mating takes place. So that's well worth some research. The Kennel Club have a whole load of advice on how to find a responsible breeder, so it's absolutely worth having a look on their website and finding out a little bit more. The thing with adopting a puppy at the moment, we've got this kind of thing with vaccinations are not being done routinely at the moment, and as Juliet and Marie both hinted, life is going to go back to some form of normality in a few months' time. And if you're adopting a puppy, then you need to be thinking what's going to happen in our life in 6 months you know, what's going to happen in that puppy's first year, because the investments you make within that puppy's first year pay for the rest of its behavioural life. If you don't invest the time and effort into that first 6 months, you're playing catch up forevermore. And the first 12 months, to be honest, it is absolutely critical for that puppy's behavioural development. So investment is essential, and we only know that this is going to go on for another few weeks at this point. We don't know how long it's going to last, so we might all be back to work shortly, and we just need to factor in, if we do all go back to work shortly, who's going to entertain the puppy for us when we're at work. You might have something in place, and that might be fine. If you've got a friend or relative that's able to have the puppy for you, then you return to your normal routine. But if you haven't, then think long and hard before taking on a puppy.
And what about all these breeders that have the puppies ready to go to their new homes before the lockdown came into place, but now aren't able to new homes, and they're stuck with those breeders at 10 weeks, 12 weeks, however long this is going to go on? Will that have an impact on their development?
That truly depends on the breeder. If the breeder's a good breeder and invests the time and effort into the puppies, actually the puppies could potentially grow up slightly better balanced than a puppy that would go into a new home at 8 weeks old. It really does depend on the investment made into that puppy's welfare. If that breeder is taking the puppies out into the garden and house training them and doing some training them with them individually, there is no harm in them spending a bit more time in their breeder's home, as long as they're having the basics taught to them during that period of time. So I wouldn't be heartbroken, and I would be perfectly happy taking on a puppy that spent a bit long in the breeder's home, providing that breeder was providing the right sort of care for that puppy for those extra weeks that they've got the puppy.
And Juliet, so say the kittens do stay with their mum and their siblings for longer than they normally would because of this lockdown, is there any impact on the kittens being separated from their mother and their siblings at 6 to 8 weeks as opposed to 12 to 14 weeks?
No, as Wendy said, it depends on how much time the person with the cat and kittens invests into kittens' socialisation. It is really important, as I said, within that sort of critical socialisation period, that they have lots and lots of different experiences. And whilst you can't let kittens out, you can, if you bring things in from your garden, maybe give them a little wipe down, not because of COVID-19, but more because of if your kittens haven't had primary vaccinations, you could bring in potentially something else. But just sort of different substrates from the garden that they can get used to, make sure they're not toxic, but little bits of bark and leaves and things like that, put them in a little tray so they get to experience the outside world a little bit before, you know, they go to a home and are suddenly allowed to go outside. Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. I don't think it will make a lot of difference. The only thing is mum starts to get a little bit fed up with their kittens after a certain age, especially when they start getting little teeth, but still want to suckle from her. So it's giving mum that opportunity to be able to get up high and away from her kittens when she's had enough of them, and you know, giving her that time out.
And yeah, we need to remember that a pet is for life, not just for the coronavirus.
I think, and also just trying to encourage people to be patient and wait to support the rescue centres. There's obviously, we've got all these animals out in foster care, but they're still going to need their homes. So be patient, wait to offer the right pet, that home for when it's the most suitable time. Even if it was supporting, a really good breeder, then fine. But just take your time, do your research, and just wait. And I just think so many rescues are going to really benefit from that support as the rules are lifted.
Yeah.
So people can still rehome, Juliet, can they? Or start the rehoming process with us even during lockdown?
That is something we're looking into. I believe it may well start happening soon, but we're still looking into the logistics of how we'll go about doing that. But yeah, it will be certainly much better once kitten season starts for kittens to be able to find a home, rather than being kept at the centre. So it is something we're looking into for the best welfare of the pets we have. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And obviously, you know, if anyone has any questions about animals that they're thinking of purchasing, or they're concerned, or, you know, they can always come and speak to us via, you know, email, phone call. All of your team, you know, you're still on hand, you're still working, aren't you, from home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So be afraid to ask. No.
And also,
you know,
our website's got full of the information as well. So, you know, if people can visit there and follow our Facebook page as well, we're constantly putting so much up-to-date information and support and ideas out there as well at the moment, and, you know, live sessions and things. So all of this is going to help.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Juliet, Marie and Wendy, it's been a real pleasure. And thank you for your time and your experience. It's been great to talk to you. We'd love to hear from you. So if you do have a question or a comment, please do email in at podcast@woodgreen.org.uk. And as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, you need any advice about a pet you have or a pet that you want to rehome, please do contact us either by phone or email. We've still got staff working from home and on site that can answer any questions you have. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.